Welcome back, everybody. This is the Talking Niners podcast, part of the Blue Wire Hustle Network. I am your host, Kobe Ransom, and back with us this week from a different location is our buddy Sam. Sam, what's going on, man? How's the first week of college been for you?
Dude, first week's been insane, phenomenal, meeting a ton of people, having time in my life right here. This is going to be the new setup for the next few months, few years. Actually, next year, I should say. Next year. But overall, just having a great time. But, as always, we got to give the people what they want. Got to get back on here. So, big day for the Niners yesterday. Cut the roster down to 53. We're right into the regular season. So, got to talk about that. Let's do it.
Yes, sir. We have real football on the horizon. Not that preseason isn't real football, but you guys, after a few games, it's like, okay, ready for the real games. The Niners games are interesting because of the Trey Lance thing, but all that stuff is over now. We have the final rosters. And since we are going to start in order, and the order will start with quarterbacks, we will get into that discussion between, do we see a potential two quarterback system from Kyle Shanahan in the Niners, which it sounds like we may see a variation of it in some way. But the two quarterbacks who make the roster are Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance. Obviously, no surprises there. They only decided to keep two on the active roster. They have Nate Sudfeld back on the practice squad. But yeah, just those two guys. And I guess the only thing to really talk about is how much we the regular season, in the same game. And so I've talked about this a couple of times on different shows, but Sam, how the two quarterback system thing, how do you feel about it? Do you think it works? Do you think it's smart? How long do you think it lasts?
I've been saying this entire time, I think the 49ers are going to go with the two quarterback system simply because their backups aren't really that great. Nate Sudfeld, not really that great. Josh Rosen, not really that great. So I think you're probably looking, if you want to go with the quarterback system, I like how they have Nate Sudfeld on the practice squad, and you can use that roster spot to keep, like we did earlier, 11 defensive linemen, 11 fantastic defensive linemen, which we'll get into in a little bit. Also have room to keep an extra offensive lineman with Jake Brendel now that Mo Hurst is on the IR. You have more room to get a guy like Dante Johnson back on the team, help that cornerback depth. So overall, I think a two quarterback system was the right move for the 49ers. And I think Nate Sudfeld, that's a guy who I did not think was going to get picked up by another team. So I think the practice squad stashing him there, that's the right idea for the San Francisco 49ers right there. And I think the two quarterback system, yeah, if one goes down, it might be hard to replace him, but you can just pull up Sudfeld. You can get a guy somewhere else. I think it's going to work out really well if the 49ers use the two quarterback system. And not to mention, we used the two quarterback system in 2018 with Beathard and Jimmy Garoppolo, and that was before Mullins came up. And when Mullins came up, he was fine. So I think Nate Sudfeld being on the practice squad is totally fine.
So, all right. So you're saying as far as just like the Niners keeping two quarterbacks on the roster, but more, I'm speaking towards about what we saw in the third preseason game with Kyle using both quarterbacks in the game. As far as coming out in between drives, what do you think about just Kyle using both guys in the game? You think that is something that is sustainable? You think that's maybe detrimental to either quarterback since they're both, quarterbacks, you kind of tend to want to get into a rhythm with the guys and you don't really want to come out and go in and go out and come in. As far as in the games and Kyle using both Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo, not like Lance with the package, like just both actually going out there for certain situations, do you feel like that's a smart choice from Shanahan? And if it is something to actually do, how long do you think it lasts?
I think the two quarterback system, it's definitely a unique way of playing football. You saw the Eagles do that a little bit last year. You've seen the Saints do that. And in terms of that two quarterback system, I do think Shanahan's a very creative guy. He's been using guys like Deebo Samuel as running backs. He's been switching guys from wide receiver to tight end like Jordan Matthews. He's been using a ton of pass-catching RBs. Elijah Mitchell is one that comes to mind. We saw him in a lot of pass-catching plays. So I definitely think with Shanahan's offense, it could work really well. He's a very creative coach. And I definitely think Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo, I think that would be a very good two-quarterback system. However, in the end, I do think, ultimately in the end of the season, I do think it'll be a one-quarterback system with Trey Lance, with Jimmy Garoppolo being the backup. But it also helped Trey Lance ease into what we need him to ease into that starting quarterback role, into that franchise quarterback role. So overall, I think you can get Trey Lance in that two-quarterback system. I think that it will help him develop a bit more and also keep Jimmy in the games, maybe increase his trade value come the end of the season.
Yeah, to me, this thing is, I think Kyle never wanted Trey to spend the entire season on the sideline holding a clipboard. I think he wants to get him out there. Obviously, Trey Lance, a year away from football. Obviously had the with North Dakota State having their season in the spring, he couldn't play. He had to prepare for the draft, so he missed out on the season. So and you can kind of see he's a little rusty, a little raw. We saw inaccuracies throughout the preseason, throughout training camp, missing high, things of that nature. Just didn't look too smooth, although he had his moments in the preseason where he looked like where he was in rhythm and things like that. So I think just overall, I think Trey didn't reach a level where Kyle would be comfortable starting him off the rip. And to protect him, obviously knowing this is a team with high aspirations, knowing that this team can potentially get to the Super Bowl, starting out with Jimmy Garoppolo as a starter and then having Trey Lance come in and still get snaps during the game, not just coming in to run, like also coming in to possibly run play action or, pass the ball here and there.
The
we'll
play
see how
action
that
point,
works.
by the way, I just want to talk about the play action. That's going to be crucial because Shanahan runs on play action. That is a lot of the Shanahan offense. So getting a guy like Trey Lance in there a bit more mobile, it's going to be a lot better.
Yeah, and overall, I just think I don't know how long this probably won't last a full season. This is probably just a thing to get Trey Lance more snaps, more reps without him being the starter and him having to, just be handed the job over Jimmy Garoppolo, which I don't know if that would be the case, but that might be how it's perceived. Seeing as how he didn't have the best preseason, which he was, victim to a lot of drops from his receivers, and we know the whole story about that. But he was inaccurate at times, although he had a lot of great throws and a lot of great moments. But overall, Jimmy Garoppolo is probably just a safer bet to start right now. Seeing as how these first 5 weeks, obviously the first 2 weeks are games where I don't think it matters who starts. They might win both of those games, especially against Detroit. But this is something where Kyle's going to have to manage it really well. And he said in the halftime at halftime going to the locker room of the Raider game that they wouldn't switch like they did. I can't really talk like they did in that Raiders game where you had Jimmy run a few plays and then Jimmy runs off and Trey comes in and he runs a few plays and then Trey's running back off and Jimmy comes back in. He said it wouldn't be like that, but he did say in the post game press conference that he was going to shuffle the guys a bit during the games. And number one, I feel like if Trey can play, I would have started him, just to avoid this whole situation where you're kind of having to make it work with two guys. Because Dan Orlovsky had a point he made get up where he's like, okay, if you're doing this 2 quarterback thing and let's say Jimmy's playing well and then you throw Trey Lance out there for a drive or something like that, and then he struggles, and then it costs you maybe some points here, or maybe just it kind of you lose momentum or something of that nature, and it's the players on the sideline or in the locker room be like, okay, what are we doing here? Jimmy was getting into a groove, and then you put Trey in, and now we're behind the 8 ball. Or if Jimmy Garoppolo is playing and he's struggling, and then you put Trey Lance in, and then all of a sudden the offense is picking up, then at that point it's like, okay, can we start one of these guys? Because this 2, going back and forth kind of thing. And I know Kyle said the locker room is prepared to handle it, and they're being good about it. But when the games start, and the real games start, and like obviously games are on the line, that whole perception might change when the whole situation is real and not preseason where it doesn't really matter what happens at the end. This whole thing to me is just Kyle trying to get Trey reps until Trey can start. That's just, for me, that's what it is. I feel like Trey starting is a win, not an if. And this is how he's going to get Trey reps until he's officially ready to start a full game.
Yeah, and I think just getting those reps, I think you just got to get as many reps as you can for Trey Lance. And that's what the 49ers are going to do with this 2 quarterback system.
Yeah, because like I said, taking a year off, obviously he looks like he needs more reps. Just in the preseason, he needs to go through it more, get into the rhythm, get comfortable. We've seen him throw some fastballs at times where maybe don't you throw a fastball. We've seen a couple of some high throws, which we saw throughout camp. But when he gets into a rhythm, he looks nice. So hopefully playing more will help him get into a rhythm a little faster, a little more frequently, a little more often, and he'll look a lot better than maybe some fans were a little bit on the edge with how he's looked so far. Maybe he's a little erratic is how people might describe it, but I think he's been okay. Obviously, there's room to improve, but reps is the only way he'll improve, and this is Kyle's way of doing it. So we'll see how that works. All right, moving on to the next position group, running backs and technically fullback. So we have Raheem Mostert, Trey Sermon, JaMychal Hasty, who is either him or Mitchell to some people is a surprise, and Kyle Juszczyk, obviously, with Wayne Gallman getting cut, which to me, when I was watching the game, obviously that was the guys I wanted to go with. I was like, okay, if I'm picking running backs here, I'm picking the guys we have on the roster: Mostert, Sermon, Hasty, and Mitchell. And now giving Gallman, the boot. And some people were against it because Gallman was the best pass protecting back, we had on the roster during the training camp preseason session. But it's obvious that Kyle Shanahan felt differently about it, or at least felt like Gallman's pass blocking ability wasn't as needed and preferred to have, obviously, the yards that JaMychal Hasty can produce. And obviously, Elijah Mitchell had a great training camp before he got injured. He came back and he had a couple of mental miscues out there, a false start, and things of that nature. But overall, I think Mitchell, it was reported that he was the best receiving back in camp. And obviously, he's got that burst. He ran a 4.3. Obviously, he was drafted as well. So that's a guy that Kyle and them felt great about that they wanted on the roster. It doesn't surprise me. This is who I preferred them to have. But Sam, what do you make out of the running back room for this year?
Well, first of all, I just want to say the thing about the pass blocking with Wayne Gallman, people are like, oh, we need that pass blocking. I don't know why Shannon cut him. Do you really need that pass blocking when you have Kyle Juszczyk in the same backfield as well? That doesn't really make much sense to me. I don't think you necessarily needed, even though I did say earlier this offseason, there's a chance that Wayne Gallman could be the RB1 on this team. And he didn't perform at like that RB1. And we didn't end up meeting him because we have guys like Kyle Juszczyk who can do the pass blocking. And overall, if you want a better running back in general, with what your typical running back is, when you get the ball and just go for the yards and everything, the better running back is JaMychal Hasty and Elijah Mitchell. And by the way, Elijah Mitchell can do kickoff return, punt returning. We need that badly. I know Shanahan was talking about that today, where they haven't figured it out yet. So I think overall they made the right decision by keeping JaMychal Hasty and Elijah Mitchell, two guys who definitely would have got picked up if they waived them, and two guys who have way more upside than Wayne Gallman. Even though I really like Wayne Gallman, I do think he could be, if one of our running backs goes down, I would not be surprised whatsoever the 49ers brought a guy like Wayne Gallman back. But you also have Jeff Wilson on that team as well. So he's on the PUP list. One of those running backs could be gone by midseason when Jeff Wilson comes back. And I think right now, JaMychal Hasty would probably be that guy. Maybe just go 5 running backs, cut someone else. But overall, I really like what the 49ers did at running back. Hasty, Mitchell, Mostert, Sermon. Mostert and Sermon were guarantees. Mitchell, I think, should have been a guarantee. You don't really want to waive a 6th-round pick after you draft him. So I like how we kept Elijah Mitchell. And JaMychal Hasty, I do think, is a better, when you think of a prototypical running back, he is the better guy than Wayne Gallman. So I think it makes a lot of sense why Wayne Gallman got cut. And I don't really see why people are saying Wayne Gallman should have been on this team, because Kyle Juszczyk is already on this team doing the pass blocking duties.
And I guess the only time Juszczyk would be on the field to pass block would be if they're in gun, and they're in like a 3rd and long and they go 3 wide, then you wouldn't have
even like a play action too. Like you fake the handoff to Juszczyk and then that could happen.
But sometimes Kyle uses receivers and tight ends to pass block as well on play action. We've seen
True
Kendrick Bourne in the past, block on play action. So he can utilize a bunch of different guys. And I think that's what it came down to, is he'll find a way to get some, good pass protection for his quarterbacks with someone else. But Hasty gets you yards. When he gets the ball, he has the ability to, to find a hole and create lanes for himself with how elusive he is. And we saw that throughout the preseason. We know he has the fumble issue throughout camp. He had one in that first game against the Chiefs, but he most definitely played his way back onto the roster after starting out probably a little behind the 8 ball with just the struggles he had early on with holding onto the ball. But when you got a guy who is getting yards as often and as easy as Hasty was during the preseason, it's hard to get rid of him, especially when that's what you want for your running back. You want guys who can create yards when they're not there. And I think Hasty has that ability to do that, and he most definitely earned his spot by doing that during the preseason. All right, receivers. This was obviously probably one of the more I guess one of the positions under the microscope, because the Niners didn't really do a whole lot to address it in the offseason, only bringing in, well, I guess, in theory, they brought in Trent Sherfield, which we'll get into in a second here while we're talking about it. And then they brought in Austin Watkins Jr., who didn't make the roster. He ended up getting waived with the injury settlement earlier this offseason. So
is he not on this team, period?
Yeah, he's not on the team at all. He's just gone.
Oh, okay. I thought he got waived and then was placed on IR and then just reverted back to IR.
He was put on IR, but then they released him with the injury settlement. So I guess they just didn't really want him on the roster anymore.
Gotcha.
So we have Brendan Ayuk, Deebo Samuel as well. Those are the 2 guys who we knew for sure was going to make the roster. Then we have Mohamed Sanu, Trent Sherfield, Jalen Hurd, and then Juwan Jennings. So I guess the only surprise here to some people is Jalen Hurd, and it wasn't a surprise that, we didn't end the 53-man roster because Kyle Shanahan said basically, he's one of our 6 best receivers, and he will be on the roster if he's healthy. And he was healthy enough to finish the preseason, and so he is on the 53-man roster. He did not practice today, but Shanahan said he is on track to start week 1. So I guess right now it's not too much of a concern. Oh, I guess also another injury to be, I guess, aware of is Trey Lance with his chip finger. For people who didn't know, he has a chip bone in his finger, and he's expected to be out for about a week. Should be back for the hoping Monday. But I think he may still be able to have a role in the Lions game week 1, which is next week. Thank God, real football is real close. But back to the receivers. So Travis Benjamin is on the practice squad. Simba Webster got picked up by, I forget who.
Chicago.
I want to say the Bears?
It was Chicago.
Yeah, the Bears picked up Simba Webster. That was a guy that apparently they had their eyes on to bring back to the practice squad for maybe a potential return man, if need be. But Shanahan said today that he didn't want a receiver spot utilized just for someone to return. So he said he'll find somebody who's on the roster that can return punts. So, and it might be Brandon Ayuk. It may be someone else. We'll see. I'm thinking it's Brandon Ayuk. So we're returning at least the punt returns. Kick return will likely be. We saw Elijah Mitchell get back there in the preseason game, so it might be him if he's active on game days. So overall, not a whole lot. I guess the biggest thing is Trent Sherfield. It was a guy who I thought was just going to be a special team guy. Could potentially get cut. I think we talked about the signing during free agency. We were like, yeah, it's not too big of a signing. Maybe just a special team guy, but he really came on strong during camp. In camp, he was the guy who stood out almost every day in camp, getting open, making plays down the field. We saw it in the preseason games as well. It was no fluke. The guy looks like he can legit play. I'm sure the Cardinals are kicking themselves right now for losing him for nothing, and the Niners picking him up, and they have to deal with him twice a year.
Yeah, Trent Sherfield, definitely one of the best stories in camp. I for sure thought he was going to get cut when camp started. But one hell of a camp from Trent Sherfield. And looking at the rest of the roster, I think the big surprise, I think we knew that Juwan Jennings and Mohamed Sanu were going to make this roster no matter what. I think the biggest surprise, Jalen Hurd, that was the real only question mark there. And personally, I think Jalen Hurd should have made this roster. I also think Simba Webster should have made this roster. I would have gone 7 receivers, keeping Simba Webster for special teams duties because even though Brandon Ayuk is a fantastic kick returner and punt returner, you definitely need a guy to help him out because he's your wide receiver 1. And if you lose him on a special teams play, that's just going to kill your entire team for the rest of the year. So I think Simba Webster would have been a great fit on this team. I bet the 49ers wanted to have him back on the practice squad, but the Bears picked him up. Maybe you could have cut one of the other guys on the defensive line or something like that, but they wanted to keep all 10 defensive linemen. I cannot complain about that. We'll talk about, all 11 defensive linemen. I can't complain about that. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But I bet they'll find some guy. I think Travis Benjamin coming back on the practice squad also helps a lot. So if one of your receivers goes down, you can call him up. He can do some kick returning duties as well, punt returning duties. Decent at that. Trent Sherfield also did a ton of kick returning, punt returning duties in Arizona. We didn't see him do much in camp, but if needed, he can do that. But it seems like Brandon Ayuk, or we talked about Elijah Mitchell earlier, seems like those two guys are the guys who are going to do the kick returning and punt returning. But overall, I do like this wide receiver core. I can't complain about 6. I would have wanted Simba Webster on this roster, but not over any of those 6 guys.
Yeah, the receiver room, I think it's safe to say better than last year. I think safe to say.
Yeah, definitely.
I think Trent Sherfield offers more big playability than Kendrick Bourne did. Kendrick Bourne was reliable at times, just with his – I know he had the drops in there in big moments, but I think he had better hands than he got credit for. But I think Trent Sherfield overall, just with more speed and more big playability, it works a little bit more for what the Niners will eventually be when Trey Lance gets on the field as a starter, when they're going downfield more often. And that speed, speed kills, and he seems like he has it. And also, can we talk about how he gives off Antonio Brown vibes? Like just his swagger, his just demeanor. He feels like an Antonio Brown clone, at least in terms of play style. I'm not going to say in terms of production. That has to be determined. But yeah, he really has like an Antonio Brown look to him. It's like eerily similar. It's kind of scary almost how like similar he is to Antonio Brown.
Mm-hmm. And also, can I just say one more thing about Sybil Webster? And I think we're kind of done with the wide receiver conversation. So I kind of want to skip a position and go right to offensive line. Sybil Webster should have made this roster over Tom Compton. I have no clue how Tom Compton made this roster. He's been terrible. By the way, I haven't been following the 49ers for this past week because I've been like moving in, doing all that stuff, having fun in college. But I know damn well that Tom Compton did not deserve to make this roster. And now you brought back Jake Brendel. So I mean, you can't get Sybil Webster now because obviously he's in Chicago, but the 49ers should have kept 7 offensive linemen on the initial 53-man roster, brought back Jake Brendel. If Jake Brendel got picked up, I mean, yeah, Dakota Shepley got picked up, but you could have brought him back too if you really wanted to. So overall, I think the 49ers made a big mistake by keeping Tom Compton, letting Sybil Webster go. It would have been so much better if they did that, having 7 receivers and still keeping 8 offensive linemen. Right now, you have 9 offensive linemen on this team, and 2 of those guys, I mean, I'll just say Tom Compton is probably going to get cut as soon as someone gets down and we want to add another position to this team.
I feel like the Niners' plan may have been that they'd be able to cut Shepley and Brendel and then bring them back once they put people on IR.
I would not be surprised if that was the plan too.
And then Shepley got picked up and it's like, oh, well, damn. That didn't work. So
well, also, what's his face? Devonte Harris went on IR too, but I think the plan for Devonte Harris was to just get him back, to put him on IR and then pick up Dante Johnson again.
Yeah, that was definitely what they were planning because they put a corner on IR, picked up another corner. I think they just thought that it'd be more likely for Johnson to be left unclaimed, and so they thought they would waive Johnson, keep Harris, and then bring back Johnson when they put Harris on IR. I think they now just tried to maneuver in a way where they didn't have to. Which I don't know why he wouldn't just kept Shepley on the roster and cut Tom Compton and then bring Compton back.
I would have just kept Shepley on this roster, or even Brendel. I personally, I'm surprised that Seattle went Shepley instead of Brendel. But is it Brendel or Brendel? I need to know.
I don't even know. He's Brendel. Brendel. He's Mr.
Brendel. Okay,
Brendy
whatever.
Brendel.
I'm surprised Seattle went with Shepley over Brendel, but overall, I definitely think they should have kept one of those guys. That's definitely my biggest problem with this roster is the fact that they kept Tom Compton and didn't keep a guy like Jake Brendel, like Dakota Shepley, or like Sybil Webster. 3 guys who I think were well more deserving. Even Wayne Gallman was well more deserving than Tom Compton. That's my biggest issue for the team. And the only reason they kept him, I'll tell you right, everyone's saying like the only reason he kept him is because he can play guard or tackle. That's not the case because all the other backup offensive linemen can play guard or tackle. The reason they kept him is because he's the oldest guy on the team. He's a veteran. And none of the other guys, you have Jalen Moore, rookie, Aaron Banks, rookie.
Alex Mack. I don't think that's the reason.
Well, no, sorry, for the backup offensive lineman.
I mean, I don't think you need a vet for a backup. Because if Alex Mack's
I mean,
not playing,
I think you want to like help. I think you want to help the young guys out on those second team reps. I think you need some guy to help those young guys out. So I think having a veteran on that team, it's important. But I think they chose the wrong veteran. Even Jake Brendel, who does not have much NFL experience, from what I know, even he would have been a better option than Tom Compton, or even Senio Kelemeti. That would have been. He's a starter. He started with Houston in the past. He would have been a better option than Tom Compton.
He's on practice squad, so
he's on the practice squad, but still,
yeah. So. I mean, I can understand maybe they want a hybrid because, I mean, I know Jalen Moore can play tackle and guard, but Aaron Banks is just a guard, and then Brendel is a center. So, I guess I don't know. I mean, hopefully it doesn't matter because they don't have to play. Hopefully it just Shepley or Compton or Brendel, hopefully they never have to play and it doesn't matter. But people were real upset about Shepley ending up being a Seahawk and why he wasn't kept on this roster over obviously Tom Compton. No one likes Tom Compton, it feels like. And
I mean, it's Tom Compton. He's not good.
Also, Sean Coleman once again. Sean Coleman's an IR once again.
Yeah, I don't. My thing with Sean Coleman. Speaking of that, I don't know why he keeps staying on this team.
His luck is just
he's been on this team for I think
3 years.
This is his 4th season on this team. Yeah, if you want to include the COVID opt out, this is his 4th season on this team. I'm pretty sure. Maybe his 3rd. I don't really know.
I think it's just 3 years, and 1's opt out, and 2 are just him ending up on IR. And yeah, he says,
I think they're just stashing him just for the sake of it because he knows the system. It's not a bad move, but he knows the system. I mean,
obviously he's supposed to be one of their backup tackles, obviously, but it just hasn't worked. I mean, because he's never available when the season starts. It just sucks for him. sucks for him. All right, D lineman. This is where you thought that.
Wait, we didn't talk about tight ends. We skipped. I wanted to skip the offensive lineman. Yeah, we skipped tight ends because I wanted to talk about Simba Webster not making it over Tom Compton. But tight ends, I don't really have much to say for it. I mean,
me neither.
Those were the three guys I expected to make it, and I like how we kept not Charlie Warner, Jordan Matthews on the practice squad. That's really all I have to say for tight end.
Yeah, George Kittle is George Kittle. Drelly is solid as a run blocker and as a pass catcher at times, and then Warner is also a good blocker. We know that from his days at was it Georgia? I keep forgetting colleges. I want to say
Georgia. And by the way, I know a lot of people are saying Charlie Warner should not make this roster because he's not that good of a tight end. Yeah, he might not be that great of a tight end, but it's a scheme. It's all a scheme fit. That's really all it is because the 49ers need that one blocking tight end who can be that pure blocker. And Charlie Warner's that guy. And you've seen, I mean, he's shown flashes of what he can do in some games. He is a fantastic blocker. That's why I really like Charlie Warner. He fits the system perfectly. And yeah, he's not the best patch catcher, but when you have Ross Dwelly, when you have George Kittle, and when you have a much better receiving core than this team's ever had in the Shanahan era, it's not a necessity that Charlie Warner's catches passes. That's just a luxury. He's there for the blocking, and I think people just need to own up to that. He's there for the blocking, and he's here to stay.
All right, defensive lineman. This is where you thought that someone good would have to get cut, and they really just kept them all for the most part. A lot of the guys who they cut were guys who were brought in later in the training camp session, so they weren't guys who were favorites to make the roster anyway. But we got D Ford, Samson Ebukam, Kevin Givens, Eric Armstead, Zach Kerr, DJ Jones, Contavious Street, Maurice Hurst, who is on IR right now, but he'll be back. I think 6 weeks or 3? I forget which.
It's 3.
Yeah, 3.
IR is 3. Pup is 6.
Yeah, because the new IR rules that got implemented last year during COVID. So yeah, 3 weeks for Maurice Hurst, Nick Bosa, Arden Key, and Javon Kinlaw. Those are the 11 defensive linemen, and obviously the Niners like their depth, and it's a lot of quality defensive linemen. All these guys are fantastic guys, and just you have excellent depth. They're going to be getting at the quarterbacks all game long, and it's obvious where they want to win the games. They want to win the games up front in the trenches, and they have the guys to do that, especially if D Ford and Nick Bosa are healthy and on the field. This defense should get after the quarterback fairly often, unlike last season.
Yeah, and I think the 49ers did completely right. I know John Lynch was talking about last week how they got calls about all their defensive linemen. They weren't willing to trade any of them. And I'm honestly glad that they didn't cut any of them now that I think of it, especially now that Mo Hurst is on IR. It makes perfect sense for them to keep all 11. And I know I said 10 because I think 7 defensive tackles is a lot, but now, especially now that Mo Hurst is on IR, I can't really complain too much. And I can't, even if Mo Hurst wasn't on IR, I can't complain too much because you didn't get value for your guys. So I think it's best to just keep them. You don't want to lose a guy like Zach Kerr for nothing because Zach Kerr could start on other teams and actually have a great season. And then you just looks really bad on you.
You can still trade one later.
Yeah, and you can still trade one. Once Mo Hurst comes back, you can absolutely still trade one. I would not be surprised if the 49ers do that because there's going to be some defensive tackles that go down, and the Niners are going to get calls immediately for guys like Mo Hurst, Zach Kerr. Even a guy like DJ Jones, they could get called for. And I think because he's on a contract year, you could probably get a 4th-round pick for him and slide in a guy like Mo Hurst or Zach Kerr into the starting lineup or something like that. But overall, I definitely think you look at this defensive tackle depth or defensive line depth, I should say, definitely the strongest place for this team. I think that's kind of obvious at this point. And even on the practice squad, they kept Alex Barrett, they kept Darion Daniels, the 2 guys that – so they kept every defensive lineman they had in camp besides Eddie Yarbrough.
Is on
and Jordan Willis is suspended
list, so he can. He's
and I think he's only is he suspended for 6 games?
Yeah,
6 weeks. So yeah. So overall, I think you're probably looking at. I mean, some of the defensive line is going to shift a little bit this year. I bet you're going to see some trades where the Niners get some value. Right now, the Niners they don't have a 7th anymore. They traded Jonas Griffith, got that 6th back, but overall, yeah, you can definitely get that 7th back. You can definitely recuperate. We're missing a 3rd. We're missing our 1st. So you're probably not going to get a 1st. You can get a 3rd per a guy like DJ Jones, maybe, depending on how he plays.
Yeah, it's very, very deep defensive line. Nick Kerr, that's Steve Kerr's son. Zach Kerr, my bad. Zach Kerr was fantastic during the preseason. He had the game against the Chargers where he got in the backfield, made some plays. We saw the starters from when they were out there in the Raider game. We saw them get after quarterbacks. Ebukam looked great in the preseason. We haven't even seen D Ford and Nick Bosa yet, and that defensive line was all over quarterbacks during the training camp in the preseason. So, Yeah, as long as obviously, and even from a health standpoint, even if they do have some health issues, they have guys that can contribute very well if guys go down. So it's probably the strongest position on the roster. Maybe outside of maybe another one would be running back, where they're very strong, in my opinion. But defensive line is probably the strongest position group on this roster for sure.
Easily.
Maybe you can count quarterback too. You got 2 starters, so not every team has.
I mean, you could, but like one of them is not. Unless at some point this year, one of them is not going to be playing. Whereas the defensive tackles and defensive line, I would not. Yeah, none of those guys are going to be listed on inactive unless they're hurt. And I think inactive is it 5 or 6? I forget.
I think you have 46 active. I don't know if they changed that recently, but I think it used to be just 46, right?
Yeah, and I don't think any of those
players.
Exactly. I don't think any of those defensive linemen are going to be listed as inactive unless one of them goes down.
It may be one.
Yeah, maybe, but all of those are starting caliber defensive linemen. So I don't see how you could list one as inactive. That's just gonna players are just gonna be more disgruntled for that. I think if you want to go inactive, we'll talk about guys you can list inactive later, but obviously Tom Compton better be one of them.
Well, they only got 3
I mean, he's the worst player on this
active
team, so it's nothing. I mean,
oh my
it's
Jesus, come on. I mean, that's I guess for offensive line, they only got 3 backups. Well, 4 if you count Brendel. I forgot Brendel is now on the
Brendel's now on this team
on there. So I guess 4 back. I guess that's fine, but I think they probably took it. Left a couple off just so they can have more guys on the defensive line for sure. Linebackers. So for linebackers, we've got Fred Warner, Drake Greenlaw, Azeez Al-Shaair, Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles. Is it Fowles or full? It's Fowles. And then Marcel Harris, who turned to linebacker this training camp and made the roster as a linebacker. So that's good to see. Pretty strong group. I think obviously Jonas Griffith had a good preseason, but he got traded for a pick. Justin Hillary got cut, and then he got picked up by the Giants, so he's not here. For the guys who do have, I think they're pretty solid. And I think it should be fine. I think Harris adds some flexibility as well at the linebacker, a little more speed, probably a better cover guy, depending on how D'Amico Ryans wants to use him in situations. But obviously, Azeez Al-Shaair was great last season in spots. Trey Greenlaw and Fred Warner, obviously a pretty solid duo, pretty solid tandem. And obviously, you can still have guys playing the box, at safety too with Talanoa Hufanga and Jaquiski Tart. So as far as just the linebackers, I think it's a pretty solid group, and I think obviously with Fred Warner, you're going to be A-okay.
Yeah, and I think this is the linebacker group I would have kept. I would say Tom Compton again with Jonas Griffith. Jonas Griffith could have made this roster over him, but I'm not complaining. We got value for him. I really like what we did with Jonas Griffith. He was probably number 54, and I love how we got some value for him. But overall, this is the 5 guys I probably would have kept on this roster if we wanted to go with 5 linebackers, which we obviously did. Marcel Harris, I think some people are upset why we kept him over Jonas Griffith. First of all, we got value for Jonas Griffith. We didn't get any for Marcel Harris, so I think you go with Marcel Harris there. And second of all, you look at Marcel Harris, he can play safety as well. So if one of your safeties goes down, just move him back up there. I think Marcel Harris could contribute to this team in a nice way this year. And I really like what the 49ers are doing with him. Moving him to linebacker. If he stayed at safety, I doubt he would make the roster. So I do like how the 49ers are making that transition for him, moving him to linebacker because he can't play linebacker. And he can play linebacker pretty well. He was taking reps all throughout training camp at linebacker. And now he's on this roster listed as a linebacker and no longer a safety.
All right, moving on to the cornerbacks. So we have Jason Ferrett, Emmanuel Mosley, K'Wan Williams, Diamondor Lenore, Ambry Thomas, and everyone's favorite cornerback, Dante Johnson. So I think we feel a little bit better about corner because of the rise of Diamondor Lenore. He took a spot that I think many thought that Ambry Thomas was going to have as the backup or maybe potentially the starter, cornerback 2 or this outside corner, wherever you want to label him as. But Diamondor Lenore seems to be he's going to be the backup. He can play in the slot or on the outside. So I think it's the guy that obviously you can plug and play if you need him in one of those 2 spots. And corner room, obviously not the best, but I think it's solid enough. And considering the strength of this team is up front, the front 7, I think it's good enough. Having Verrett over, when Sherman was our best, corner in the last few years, I think Verrett having the ability to play him on some other team's best receiver for the entire game is something that will also help this team a lot. And, really just hope for health. Mosley's been hurt, a bit. Verrett's been hurt, a bit. Even K1's been hurt a lot. So the biggest thing is really health with this group. But if they're healthy, I think they're good enough to get the job done.
Yeah, and overall, a lot of people know my beef with Dontae Johnson. I'm not even that mad that we kept him. He knows the system, depth guy, veteran. I'm fine with it. I'm not going to go in on him too
He's a
much
backup.
anymore.
He's not a starter. He's a backup.
Yeah,
so.
I'm not going to go in on him too much. But overall, this is a good group. And usually, we kept Devonte Harris to put him on IR, added Dontae Johnson. I can't really complain about that too much. That's just stashing more guys. So very smart move by the Niners to keep Devonte Harris on that team, then move him to IR and keep Dontae Johnson. Because now, if Devonte Harris comes back and the 49ers do really want him on this team, they can just cut Dontae Johnson. Or even it would have to be Dontae Johnson probably, and then just put him on this team. So overall, I do like what the Niners did logistically with that. And yeah, it's a weak group. You have Verrett, you have Mosley, Diamador Lenore has looked good. You have Kalen Williams. Those are strong guys. Other than that, the depth behind that, it definitely needs some improvement. But overall, this cornerback group is not even that bad. I was about to say it was the weakest on the roster, and I started thinking out loud, it's not even that bad anymore. If Diamador Lenore is what we think he is.
Yeah,
and the guys can stay healthy.
We play against starters a little bit different than playing against the backups, but in that game, he did play some snaps against Tyreek Hill and held his own. Obviously, there's no game planning, so maybe in a real game he gets toasted. But he held his own for a little bit in that game as well. So maybe Lenore maybe we've got something for real with him with another first-round pick, fifth-round gem for John Lynch potentially. Let's talk about Ambry a little bit, though, because Ambry was the guy that many were saying would probably start opposite Verrett. People had confidence that he could start, and maybe he fell because of the opt-out, but he did
fall because of the opt-out. Can I just say the thing about that? I'm going to interrupt you right now because I think I kind of know where you're going, but he did fall because of the opt-out, and he was a raw prospect, and they gave Emmanuel Mosley starting money, so I think I knew all along that Emmanuel Mosley was going to be the starter. Ambry Thomas, I definitely think was going to be a backup this year. I did not expect Diamador Lenore to be better than him. But Ambry Thomas, I know a lot of people are saying, like, oh, he had a disappointing camp. You got to be patient because Ambry Thomas was a guy who was supposed to be a raw prospect going in, and that's why he fell to the third round. If he played another year, he could have been a first-round pick from what many people were saying. He needs more time to develop, and it showed in camp. So give Ambry Thomas a bit of time. He could start next to those guys next year. I know we have Verrett in a contract year, and Mosley actually is not in contract year, I believe. He's on a 2-year deal.
Verrett and K1, which the way Lenore's playing, K1 could be his last year. So
yeah, I would not be surprised if it was both those guys last year. So that means Ambry Thomas could take over next year. So do not be surprised if Ambry Thomas does not get much playing time this year because he's supposed to be that raw guy. He's not supposed to be that cornerback 2 right away. He was projected more as a cornerback 2 on a bad team. Or that would have been a bad scheme for him. He was mainly projected to be a cornerback 3, cornerback 4. Right now, if you want to count Kalen Williams, he's the cornerback 5. But on our team, if without him, he's cornerback 4 for the outside cornerbacks. I'm totally fine with that. I think that word makes perfect sense for Ambry Thomas. I think that will help his development come down the line. So, yeah, I think Ambry Thomas is in a good position right now to succeed.
Yeah, the opt-out, and this is his first year back. But even there's some good points about him coming out of college and the fact that, even he was grabbing receivers that were in Michigan State where he was having to, to grab and pull to stay with guys. And when you're playing against guys who are a lot more talented than the guys in Michigan State, you start to wonder if, his coverage ability might not be as great as it seemed 2 years ago in Michigan. So, we'll see. Like you said, project guy, maybe this guy that likes his measurables and they want to take a chance on that. Or is Ambry Thomas a guy where they felt like they had to get a corner and they drafted Ambry Thomas and he turned out to not be what they were hoping he could be. And it's a chance that obviously you don't want to be too negative, but it's rookie year and you got to give him time before you find out what it really is. But he's not off to a good start. And hopefully things pick up here over time and he starts to look a little bit better. But he had his struggles. And like Dawson said here, that tackle against the Raiders where he took eyes off of the guys and just he tried to take his legs out, but he took his eyes off him. And he kind of just ducked down and just tight end bounced off him and just ran to the end zone. It was a terrible tackle attempt. Terrible. It was abysmal. But
and I haven't even seen that tackle. I have not been able to watch the game, even though it was nationally televised. I could have watched it, but I was doing other stuff. But
that
I haven't seen that tackle, and everyone's telling me just not to watch it.
Yeah, that game. Well, the tackle came when that came off of NFL Network because I think after the second quarter they switched to another game. But
all right.
But yeah,
the only thing I did see from that was the haha Clinton Dix call, which was I heard that was terrible. It was like,
I know you did the Trader thing. Do not do that. I will literally boot you off the show.
Hey, Hussam wanted me to do it.
No, Hussam, no. Yeah, that haha interception thing they did. Like I already said, I didn't like their commentary because it was just a little too much for me. But yeah, I was like
that killed the vibe for everything.
That was like wow. It didn't end up everywhere. Like everybody was like, "Oh, look what the foreigners announcers did." The little ha-ha
I know.
thing. I'm like, bro, well, why? Why? All right, almost done. Safeties. Jimmy Ward, Jaquiski Tart, Talanoa Hufanga, who stood out a lot during camp and preseason games, and then Tavon Wilson, who makes it over. Haha, Clinton Dix we were talking about, and I'm trying to think. I think Jefferson was on IR, so that doesn't really count. But
Jefferson, I believe, isn't on this team anymore. I think he's the same thing with Austin Watkins.
Actually, hang on. Yeah, he's a free.
And Jared Maiden made the practice squad. Also, you didn't mention that.
Yeah, Maiden makes his practice squad. Yep. Yeah, you're right. He is not on the roster at all. So yeah, those are the four guys: Ward, Tart, Hufanga, and Wilson. Jaquiski Tart changed his number to 3, so we have a 1, 2, 3, 4 secondary with all
that's
4
dope.
guys. So
that's absolutely dope.
I think Tart did that on purpose.
I wish. Oh, he 100% did that on purpose. You know, I do wish it was Verrett 1, Ward 2, Tart 3, and then I wish. Yeah, and Mosley 4 because then it would just line up in order. Because instead it's going to be 2, 1, 3, 4. But you know, it is what it is.
I mean, it's fine. It's fine. At least they're all wearing single digits and it's 1, 2, 3, 4 in the starting secondary. That's cool. I think the only team in the league is doing that. So that's going to be a unique thing to see on the field.
It's dope.
So yeah, those are the guys. But Talanoa really knows the guy who's going to find himself on the field probably this season. At least in the box. Possibly as a blitzer. We saw him blitz a couple of times. He was very effective on the blitz. He was effective on the blitz at USC. He was effective on the blitz, excuse me, in the preseason games as well. So, yeah, Hufanga is a guy, and he's got great instincts, always around the ball, great tackler. That makes up for his lack of athleticism. But overall, Hufanga, shined, and the Niners got 2 pretty good DBs out of the 5th round. And once again, John Lynch is working that 5th round.
5th round magic.
First round. That man, I mean, can all our drafts just start in the 5th round? we get some solid guys in the 5th versus some guys that don't pan out that well in the 1st.
Exactly. And really with the safety group, there's not really any surprises. These were the 4 guys ever since training camp started. Tavon Wilson was a guy at the beginning of training camp, I didn't really think he had a chance to make the roster, but he started to get first. When I went to the first day, he's like started getting the first team reps. I'm like, oh yeah, this guy's probably making the roster considering that Tarvarius Moore's on the pup list. So really no surprises there. Jared Maiden on the practice squad. Some people thought Maiden should have made this roster. I don't really know about that. I think those 4 guys are better than him. So, and Talanoa Hufanga, I mean, this is this is Tart's last year on the team. Talanoa Hufanga is about to take over. So keep an eye on him this year.
Yeah, and Tart didn't have much of a market. Came back in a 1-year deal. This could be his last year with the way Hufanga's playing. So we'll see. I kind of want to open up a can of worms real quick. The 1st round versus the 5th round for the Niners so far since Shanahan and Lynch have been here. So
it's been the first round pick. They haven't hit on 1 pick yet, and not even Nick Bosa, because Nick Bosa got hurt and might not be the same.
I'm not going to go that far. Nick Bosa was rookie of the year first year.
He was rookie of the year, but is it really a hit? If someone is it really a hit?
You can't control that.
Is it okay? Well, injuries, but like still. I mean, Solomon Thomas bust, Reuben Foster bust, Mike McGlinchey.
I'll read it off right now. I got the draft. I got the drafts up. So 1st round, first year, we got Solomon Thomas, Reuben Foster, both not here. 5th round, Trent Taylor and George Kittle. George Kittle is a superstar. So that's the round where the Niners' 5th round was better than their 1st round. Next year, we have Mike McGlinchey as the 1st round pick, and then we have DJ Reid as the 5th round pick. Reid started for Seattle and was okay. But I guess McGlinchey obviously the better pick there. For a better player than I guess kind of. It's really that. I mean, Reid's also a starter in Seattle. I don't know where is he? Where is DJ Reid now?
DJ Reid's in Seattle, but he was terrible here. That's a miss pick.
Yeah.
DJ Reid was
DJ.
I know a lot of people bashed me for Dante Johnson. DJ Reid was arguably worse than Dante Johnson with the 49ers.
Yeah, McGlinchey is obviously over. I can't believe we're doing this, but McGlinchey over DJ Jones for sure. And then in that draft, then I mean we got Bosa over Drake Greenlaw. Oh, they got Bosa and Drake Greenlaw in the same draft. Whew, I didn't realize that for real. I forgot Greenlaw is super young. I don't know why I forget that.
Yeah, Greenlaw is young.
He just seems like an older player for some reason to me. I don't know why. But yeah,
I mean, because he plays like a veteran. He played like a veteran his rookie year.
Yeah,
makes sense.
Then we got Kinlaw and McKivitz, and obviously Kinlaw and McKivitz got cut. I think they won back in practice squad though. I think that's what I heard.
That's the other thing that really surprised me. I didn't think McKivitz would be even back on the practice squad because he does not fit the 49ers scheme whatsoever. They drafted him. They wanted to be a versatile offensive lineman. Turns out he wasn't. I don't think he's meant to. He played tackle in college. I don't think he was meant to play guard in the NFL. So maybe they switch him over to tackle, use him on the practice squad. But overall, it was never really a good scheme fit for the 49ers. And that's why they cut him. And I tweeted this out the other day. I'm glad they cut him because personally, I think McKivitz, I think it honestly sucks that he's back on the 49ers practice squad for him because I definitely think he needs a scheme fit change if he wants to succeed in the NFL. But it just was not working out for the 49ers. So I'm glad they cut him. I'm glad that the Niners have had a tendency of keeping draft picks that they missed on for way too long. And I'm glad they cut the ties with McKivitz right there.
Because the Niners draft linemen, the best lineman they drafted has been McGlinchey. And
the Niners linemen, they need to fix that. I think, okay.
They seem like they can't draft them. I mean, I know it's too early to say on Banks and Jalen Moore, but McKivitz was
Justin School was decent. Actually, no, you know who the best lineman they hit on considering value was Daniel Brunskill, signing him as an undrafted free agent, considering value.
But all their best linemen have been through trades and signings. Like, I mean, McGlinchey's okay with his first round pick, but he's nowhere near what you would think a top 10 tackle would be taken in the draft. You think he'd be a lot more. I mean, he's not bad by any means. He's not bad. That's something that isn't very true about him. He's a lot better than he gets credit for. He's obviously one of the best run blocking linemen in the league, but you want him to also be a pretty solid pass protector too, considering you took him a top 10 pick and he plays tackle. So,
exactly.
So I think just they might have a problem drafting linemen. And obviously taking Aaron Banks second round, and we'll see. Sometimes the learning curve is a bit steep at linemen because the guys you're going up against in college versus the NFL is a lot different. So, jury's out on Aaron Banks still. He came back in practice today, so he will likely be available for week 1. But, yeah, I mean, it's not a great track record for Kyle and the Niners with linemen. They draft a lot of guys late, where sometimes you're really just taking a chance on those guys, but they only had 2 high picks on linemen, which is Aaron Banks and McGlinchey. So I guess we'll see, but hopefully Aaron Banks turned out to not be a bust, because that would be a bad look, considering that's we took your second round pick, and you could have had a guy like I don't know, let's say Asante Samuel Jr., who looks very good.
Or even Trey Smith, who's might be starting with the Kansas City Chiefs, was in the 6th round, could have been a second rounder.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple other guys in there. Obviously, hindsight 2020, but
we'll see how it goes.
Something to think about. All right, the last 3, which is special teams: Robbie Gould, Wisnowski, and everyone's favorite long snapper, Tabor Pepper. I guess
no surprises there.
I guess the only concern you could have is, I guess maybe Robbie Gould. Does he still have it? He has some missed extra points in the preseason. You can't really hit.
I guess we'll figure that out soon enough, probably.
Yeah, Niners want him around, so I mean, he's had a lot of clutch kicks for us. I mean, I guess that's why they want him around. The guy you can rely on in the clutch. As long as he's hitting, game winners for us, I have no problems. Just don't lose us any games, like the Falcons game where you miss the extra point and cost us. That game was painful. What a painful game that was, 2019. That Falcons game.
That was
also
rough.
Mitch is a goat.
Mitch is definitely a goat.
Jason LaPonte absolutely hates Mitch Wisnowski. The way that game unfolded, where he talked, I guess he voiced his opinion on punters and all that good stuff, and his opinion on Mitch Wisnowski. And then Wisnowski came out and had a great game. He had 2 great punts in that Raiders game, and it was a pretty fun day on the timeline for Jason. Shout out to homie Jason for sure. But yeah, Wisnowski, 4th round pick on a punter. I don't care how good he is. I think a 4th round pick on a punter is crazy.
Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous, but you know, it is what it is. If he balls out, he balls out, and I'll take it.
I mean, even the best player in the world isn't worth a 4th round pick. I don't know. That's real high for.
It's still high, but if he's the best punter in football, I think a 4th round pick. He's not going to be. I don't know if he's going to be the best punter in football, but like, still, a 4th round pick's decent for that. I mean, okay, here's an ethical question. Not an ethical question, but would you trade a 1st round pick for Justin Tucker?
No.
The most consistent. People would. I would not be surprised if someone would trade a 1st rounder for Justin Tucker.
No, I would no. I would not do that. Right, maybe a 4th, which is the way you drafted Wisnowski with, but a 4th might be the highest I go for trading.
And the Bucks took a kicker in the 2nd. Raiders took one in the 1st in like 2000. Janikowski.
Oh my god, dude! Don't remind me. Jesus Christ, that's even worse than drafting a punter in the 4th.
I know.
I mean, I know a good kicker is important. They can win you games and they can lose you games too. So I guess having a good one is pretty important. But still, that high of a pick. Oof. And who was the kid that the Bucks drafted that high? And then
Roberto Aguayo got cut the next year.
Yeah, that was not a good look. What a wasteful pick that was.
Mm-hmm.
Right. All right, that's gonna do it for us. Yeah, the Lions cut all their kickers. They
got some guy from the Browns who was decent, but like still.
Yeah, I think it was obvious they didn't like what they had. So they're like, you know what? All of you, goodbye. We're gonna start over here. But that's gonna do it for us. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Talking Niners Pod. Also, I haven't put any clips up recently. I gotta get back to doing that. I've been working, man. I'm a busy man. It's hard to
We've both been working. Hey, you can't blame it. I haven't been following the. Yeah. At least you've been following the 49ers this week, which I have not been doing.
Yeah, I really.
But now that's football season. Now that I'm all settled in, now that I like have a good friend group already, I'm chilling. First week was basically just trying to make friends.
Starting, we gotta get locked in. The game, the real games are here. It's time for us to get serious. All right, yeah. Follow us at Talking Niners Pod on Twitter, on Instagram, and on TikTok. I'll put clips on there. Hopefully more frequently. No promises, though. You can follow us at Cobra Wrestling 49 GM for me, at Nine Sam for Sam. You can subscribe to our YouTube channels. If you're watching right now, make sure you hit the sub button, hit the like as well if you enjoyed the episode. And if you're listening to the podcast, I'm coughing. I need water. I checked my water bottle. I
need water too. My water bottle is right here.
It's empty, I was like, geez, there's no water in my water bottle.
Here's the one thing that sucks about college. I don't have a sink in my room anymore, so I have to like leave my room and come back to get water.
Oh Lord, that sounds terrible.
Well, I mean, like my room at home, I have a bathroom right next to me, but like this, like I have to go out, go to the main lobby, fill up my water bottle, come back. I like being a little bit isolated for a little bit.
Yeah,
but you know,
yeah. If you listen to the podcast, those links are in the description. I'm going to try to get additional content on my YouTube channel because I don't want it to just be the podcast episodes. Because at that point, I might as well make a podcast YouTube channel. But yeah, so you can find those links in the description, both mine and Sam's. Make sure you sub to. And if you're listening on Sub's channel, if you're listening on Sam's channel, I mean, obviously that's up to you, Sam. But hey, if you can come and show your boy some love, you know what I'm saying?
By the way, the Talking Niners is now my main thing. I know I have the 450 subs already. Get Kobe. Let's get Kobe to 450.
Give me to 100 first. Like I'm like 20.
Get him to 100, but let's see if we can get Kobe more because Kobe's putting in more work than I am. If I'm being completely honest, I like to keep it real with people, but Kobe's the one running the show. I'm here to come on, talk Niners, all doing that, but you guys gotta show Kobe some love. So show Kobe some love.
Yeah,
his name is Kobe.
Just give me just to.
That's like the best name to have.
Why would you not subscribe to Kobe? Like, come on.
Would you rather say, "Oh, I'm subscribed to Kobe," or would you rather say, "I'm subscribed to Sam"? Kobe's a dope ass name. Come on.
Yeah, that's gonna do it for us. Thank you guys for listening. We love all the support. And now next week we're talking about real games. next week will be our first pregame of the
Pre-game
season.
analysis.
Well, the real pregame for a regular season game of the season. We kind of pregamed the Chiefs game, but that was really a real pregame. It's like, oh, let's see what Trey Lance does, and that's like, that'll do it for us. Thank you guys for listening. As always, go Niners.
See ya.